Hello, Brie, and welcome back to episode 30. This is a round one today on This is the Year, the Swiss Artificial Intelligence Engineering podcast. And today we have a very large roster of topics to catch up on the missed episode that we didn't shoot 2 weeks ago. We talk today about OpenAI's AgentKit. We talk about some investing corner items at the very end of the pod. In the meantime, we also talk about skills, we talk about new models, and much, much more. With me today, once again, Joao, the AI wizard. How is Lisbon treating you? You still have beach weather, or how is the vibe there?
Beach weather is mostly still happening, and like the AI market, we looked at our feet for a few seconds, and then not everything, but a lot of things changed very, very fast. We're almost complaining that no new models were coming out, so the news were slowing down. And then in a couple of weeks, we have not only new models, but a lot of new announcements for major companies, new technologies coming up. So we'll get into that in the pod, but very exciting stuff, I think.
A lot of things happening, as always, in AI. Why don't we kick it off with OpenAI's AgentKit? Let me give the high-level pitch for that release. For those of you in the audience that are completely new to the AI automation space, there used to be another software as a service company called N8N. They did basically agentic workflows with drag and drop. So back then, or even to nowadays, and is providing users the interface to actually play with different AI agents, to dock many, many different components into it, to have API calls, to do a little bit of context engineering, even to more advanced levels like MCP servers you can set up on N8N. OpenAI just recently announced their own version of these AI agent flow automation kits. It's of course fully native on the OpenAI stack, so you can easily integrate ChatGPT-5. You can even slightly context engineer. And my probably best notion of the demo was you can do it without code. And the person that actually showcased it, just by saying that, actually just wrote a line of code. So it was really funny. I actually put that on the screen here. So of course, you might have to actually introduce some code components into there. You can do the same in N8N, but it's not fully no code. You still have to have some understanding on how to actually build software. What's your take, Joao, on AgentKit itself, the comparison to the N8N, and why maybe they are launching this particular a new product?
So for the past few episodes, and especially like the earliest ones on the podcast, we were very much against this no-code platforms because we as builders and the ones that are actually coding, for context, I am a senior developer. I've been coding for a while. We were on the side that you should always code, like do hard coding of this kind of things, write every single line of code, use frameworks if possible, but have a more granular approach to things. I have become, since then, a more reasonable man. And I've seen what can be done with these no-code platforms. And yes, there is a ceiling that at a certain point you have to either change the platform or actually code it from scratch and just replicate what you have in N8N or in AgentKit and just write it in code using LangGraph, LangChain, Crew AI, whatever. I think they are so capable, like these no-code platforms are so capable right now that unless you're a big company trying to launch a major product, you can do a lot with these no-code platforms. I mean, for your personal life and for personal projects, you can just test them out and have demos working in a couple days. And even if you're a major company, you can have it and try to prototype as fast as possible, see what can be done. And then once you have the proof of concept, you can move to coding. So I'm happy that these platforms exist. I'm happy to see them evolve and become more and more capable. Also because they come with integration. So especially N8N, and I think I'll justify it a bit. I like that OpenAI is also promoting their own no-code platform. It's good to have no-code platforms, but it looks good. It'll probably work very nice. I think people should go for a more agnostic approach. So OpenAI wants to lock people in their own ecosystem. It's marketing. It's a very business-like approach. It'll make them a lot of money. But as a builder, you should not be locked down to a single lineup of models. I mean, Anthropic has really good models. There's always, like every couple of weeks, even though we complain about it, there's new models coming out. Sometimes they're good, sometimes not that much, but you should be able to change. And so have N8N, which has a lot of integrations. I saw people using it for demos where you can read your email from Gmail, send a message to Telegram, go to WhatsApp and do something else, go to your calendar and schedule an event. All with drag and drop things. You don't have to worry too much about how it's set up. You can just build and try and see it working.
You brought up, just to jump in quickly, many points here that are completely valuable. I mean, I think the notion is it has its limitations, but it's probably still a more broad-based solution as opposed to AgentKit itself. I think just where it maybe lacks, and whoever's in the audience, a far better expert in N8 and no-code engineering, you can correct me, but it's on the deployment of elements, especially if you want to have some sort of degrees of freedom where the data is flowing. Is it in, for example, in a particular jurisdiction, the data centers, they might be all over Europe, but you actually want to have your inference of GPT-5 not in Stockholm or in the States. You want to have it in a particular setup in Switzerland or in France or in Germany or in Australia, wherever you're watching this from. Maybe there is some limitations on infrastructure capabilities, degrees of freedom to set it up within the cloud, but maybe we are actually getting there. You also brought up a really good point, just to finish my argument here, on fast iterations of prototypes, especially if you combine N8N as like a backbone AI engine with a front end or super sophisticated software as a service front-end engine like Versal v0. I teased it already in the last episode. I ideally would want to have some more tutorials on this channel, so definitely stay tuned for this. I hope I can start shooting in this particular or next week some tutorials on how do you actually combine N8N as a backbone AI engine and then connect it to an actual SaaS front end. So it really looks like you actually prototyped an entire agentic system to actually pitch to investors or pitch to first clients. So this prototyping cycle, especially also just on my role on the team, is actually helping me tremendously just to speed things up in cycles, as opposed to building 3-4 months ahead. I can now build things in 1 or 2 weeks, complete AI engine and complete front end. So that's a little bit, it speeds things up. You mentioned also the quality is getting better. So fast iterations are certainly possible. Last time, we probably 5 minutes before after we dropped off the podcast, we saw that Claude Sonnet 4.5 was released. We didn't include that one. It's one major leap forward again in the Claude spectrum. Claude is really famous for, I would say, coding, but also now it really looks like they're going deep into some finance use cases as well, which is really interesting for us here on the team. But what's your take maybe on Claude, release date, and some maybe more buzz around it? First feedback, Joao.
And so since it came out and I knew that Claude, and especially the lineup, has been really good at coding, I started to use right away at coding. And not only we had Sonnet 4.5 come out, but we also saw GPT-5 Codex, like a fine-tuned version of GPT-5, especially for coding. And I tried both of them, and I had a preference before for the Claude lineup. And after trying both of them, I maintained my preference for the Claude lineup, especially Sonnet 4.5. Unchanged, but renewed, let's say, because I had some bugs, like in a somewhat large code base. I was trying to see it sometimes, and it's not like I can't solve them by myself. I can, but I have to spend time and energy, and after like a couple dozen, I'm just tired and then I want to go eat something. But if I can have AI do it, then AI can work on it while I go eat something. Either way, I end up a little bit fatter. And so I use Sonnet 4.5, I use GPT-5 Codex. Sonnet was not only way more verbose in what it was doing and explained to me the process so that I can actually review what was happening. I don't like pushing code that I haven't written myself, but also it was finding things and it was writing things the right way. Like GPT-5 Codex was sometimes writing code that worked, sometimes barely, and it was just bad code. Like a code that it runs that one time to do that one thing, but later you want to scale it, later you want to change it, and it won't scale that much. It's not a bad LLM. It's a very capable, better than most developers kind of LLM, but it's still not as good as Sonnet 4.5 in my experience. And I've been on forums online and people seem to agree, like generally agree. And so since then, it doesn't matter really what kind of coding agent you're using. There's a lot of them right now, especially CLI-based ones. Some have really good UIs. A Copilot, I think, is one of the major ones. Cursor, Windsurf, V0. If you use whatever coding agent you feel like it, try different LLMs, different use cases, sometimes benefit different LLMs. But so far, Sonnet 4.5 has been number one on my list.
I mean, I think it's a good notion. Maybe just on my end, maybe two things just to add here. So I've been using Versal v0 probably since the day it was released. So I'm more or less tracking very, very intuitively like what's the per model progress. Like initially on Versal v0, you were able to build a pretty okay Tailwind React app or in Java Spring Boot. Of course, with every new model coming out, this stuff is intuitively getting better. I don't know what Versal v0 in their backend or actually their AI engine, like what model they're using. I'm supposedly thinking probably a Claude Sonnet 4.5 now. Maybe they have some in-house models for validations. this is just a best guess that they're probably now using Claude Sonnet 4.5. Reason why I'm saying that, last week I started just to update the landing page for the product website of ours. So it's basically completely newly built and most likely built on Sonnet 4.5. And the order of magnitude difference from that just to the month before was probably crazy. Like it's just a lot better, a lot more instruction following. It's has a lot better understanding on the code base in general. It hardly ever messes up a component I built before, and it's just adding things up. You can also do, and we talked about that multiple times, after 10, 15 steps of vibe code, you should probably do a refactoring or maybe a UX polishment, speed things up, make it very low load speed, for example, as well. And now I think with Sonnet 4.5, it really has this nuanced understanding of actually generating great code, both visually, but also from a performance basis. Some other notion, just aside from that, I quickly wanted to add, Joao, is 30 hours of autonomous reasoning. And it sounds like a lot, but I think from a product perspective, this might open a lot of doors just to sell agentic AI software. Let me give you the high-level pitch, Joao. You can run reasoning on whatever analysis task, be it in finance, compliance, risk management, legal stuff, even in the evening, agentively, and over the weekend. I think that's the first time where an advanced model gives you this possibility, and it certainly probably opens a new domain of agentic products that you can log off your computer, they actually go on and do something over the weekend and bring you back, hopefully, a very advanced level of analysis. What do you think about that? All marketing, or it maybe is the next wave of AI?
My doctor advises against it because I have a very high level of salt. So a lot of salt on those statements and I'll do the counter pitch in the elevator, which is it's very interesting that we have it. In my experience, when you have like some kind of deep research, like agent, special ChatGPT, I think we're the first ones to introduce this kind of thing. You can start seeing it drift off from what you initially asked it to do. So for most tasks that I've been using it for, maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes of deep research, and I get the answers I want. If I don't get it by 15 minutes or more, if I get like half an hour, the answers I get, like adding double the compute, are not that much better than the ones I got from 15 minutes of compute time. So I want to see those 30 hours of compute, 30 hours of deep research, but I want to see it being used right. So I think it'll depend a lot on who's running the deep research. ChatGPT, for example, OpenAI, not initially, but now almost every time you ask it to do some kind of deep research, it'll throw you like a list of questions to double check something, like really narrow down your scope. And I think it's been instructed to do so. It's a very rigid kind of workflow. That's why it almost always happens, because deep research can very often like drift off into whatever field, whatever theme LLM feels like. And so they do it to make sure like it stays on topic, it stays to do whatever you want it to do. And so 30 hours of compute time, it's a lot of time for it to wander off. And like you ask it for some deep analysis on some stock you're thinking of buying, and you might end up with a video game, like an emulator or something, because it found that a lot of video game companies are worth $1. So,
I mean, accordingly to them, just to say the counter to your counter, they should do a lot more instruction following. But I would be certainly very much curious in seeing benchmarking and more testing for every new hour of incremental compute. How does the quality output actually change? So if there must be some sort of sweet spot ideally for most of the analysis tasks, and maybe it's not 30 hours, maybe it's actually 6 or 7. And then the rest of the 26 or 24 hours of compute just is not incrementally yielding much better quality outputs, then it should actually be stopping and not just wasting you a lot of compute and tokens. That probably will remain to be seen. But you actually brought up a good point, maybe just for agentic collaboration with humans, right? So you might actually initiate the reasoning task. The human can narrow down the space to such an extent that the AI very much knows what it has to work on for the subsequent 14 hours with multiple back and forth. So for example, a first instruction, a first feedback, a second instruction, second feedback. And then maybe after 20, 30 minutes of back and forth, the AI has a very well granular understanding of the task. Then it can spend the 14 hours of compute. So that's a little bit maybe how the workflows might be evolving. I just don't know how this is going to work out. It's a little bit like training LLMs or training a machine learning model, right? So you have all the parameters, you have the features, you maybe have hyperparameters set up, you have some assumptions, then you let that stuff run, and you basically check high-level KPIs. If the training is very unstable, you might have to actually stop it, and you have to follow some particular notions of KPIs, and maybe it's the same now with this new agentic back and forth work. Let's see. I'm certainly
I think
excited.
The research from LLM, especially like the latest research, they show different stages of training. So they'll train the model on something, but then they'll change the metric and the goal for the LLM to train, for example, in a chat environment. And sometimes it'll train on a coding environment, like in a coding that you can call tools and write code. Sometimes they'll put the agent in an entirely different thing, and it's always training the LLM. This multi-stage process, I think, also applies for those kinds of tasks where I like the 30 hours of compute. I don't want it to be on the weekends because I want it to have some kind of human in the loop interaction. And we've mentioned it, I think, in the last episode, which is it's very good to have like some kind of insight on what's happening. There was some research that the reasoning tokens are faster and it's more efficient if the models use their own language and they don't care about writing in English or whatever like human language we want. I think it's good to keep them at an understanding level so you can actually know what's happening, maybe steer it a bit in the direction you want. Because it's normal for you to have an opinion and want to try something. Like it'll give you some results about some stocks, for example, and you see, oh, okay, this stock's cool. What about the comparison between these two companies? I've been hearing a lot about them. So it's an iterative process. I don't want 30 hours of like full straight ahead, do whatever you want. I want 30 hours of like every half hour or every couple hours, a bit of collaboration between human and agent. But that's just me. Maybe I'm old-fashioned.
It's either automatically, right? So through some sort of quality gate. And if the quality gate is not matched, like, or some eval after 30 minutes is not matched, it actually falls back to a human interaction. If the quality gate is matched, then it proceeds to the next 30 minutes of compute. Maybe something like this is maybe the new UX experience, machine to AI interface. Also, I will put that on the screen here. There was actually a new research coming out to teach large language models to plan. Because at the end of the day, all this reasoning is basically nonsense if the LLM itself doesn't understand how to structure a task and plan to complete it. So once again, this research just gave a bit of a high-level understanding of how you actually need to instruct large language models to really do the planning really well. So, and this paper really shows that it's actually a possible approach, which is maybe you have to have a nuanced and different understanding of training the LLMs itself, as opposed to just using the LLMs today, stick them together and let them think for 30 hours. I don't think that's the gateway anyway. So that's a little bit my notions. Also, we're not sponsored by AWS, but if you're a builder in Europe, especially in Switzerland, Claude Sonnet 4.5 is available in your region with one small caveat. Cross-region inference might be happening. So even if you have Sonnet in Switzerland, so Sonnet 4.5 in Switzerland, it might still be computed somewhere outside of Switzerland. So definitely check your compliance requirements and regulations of your use case. But again, I put that on the screen here. It should be available in your region just to play out on your hopefully model agnostic cloud setup. Enjoy the Sonnet 4.5 experience. Let us round it off, Joao, with Tech and Finance Corner. Why don't you kick it off with Figure 3? You're fairly excited, especially because you can't invest in the company.
I mean,
so what's happening?
It is a private company for now. They have an IPO. But so we've been seeing some robotics companies like announcing cool things. Boston Dynamics haven't been in the spotlight for a while, but Figure 3 is a new latest model of the Figure humanoids, let's call them. You can call them androids, you can call them, I think they have a special name for them. They might call them figures. But they launched a few hours ago, they launched this announcement video. And it is, I think, especially for a company that's, I think, valued at around $40 billion, very dumb video. Like, I like the product. I think like humanoids are super convenient, and I approve of Cyril's idea of not wanting to do the dishes and instead of getting a dishwasher.
I'm mostly looking forward to that. Robots doing my dishes.
Some kind of humanoids like robot. The problem is it's a super advanced robot. They have a partnership with OpenAI. I think they also have a partnership with NVIDIA for the processing. Like, it has all these cameras, looks like a person, has feet and hands and can move around like your house. But in the video, if you go see it, and we'll post the link in the description, it looks like a Roomba. Not the itself, just what they have it do. Like it has a dock at the some corner of the living room, and it says have it do like cleaning of the house. And I think it's for the demo, of course, but the figure's going kind of slow, so it looks very much like it's acting like a Roomba. If you ask the professional actor, hey, you have to be a Roomba, like be like a human version of a Roomba, that's what a professional actor would do. However, in terms of tech, in terms of possibilities, I am excited that we have these kind of things. It can walk around, it can move stuff. It has like the dexterity to pick up like ceramic plates. I saw it closing a laptop and putting it away. It was like pushing popcorn off a table onto some bowl to put it away. It can do all those kinds of tasks. I don't think it'll be best suited to be your housemate, at least not for now, but in a very near future it might be. But also in factories, in a lot of repetitive and demanding physical tasks, because you have to be standing up on your feet for long hours, you can have these robots and you don't have to program them, you don't have to create like a whole engineering team to make sure they work. You can just show them how it's done and they'll do the thing for an infinite amount of hours. At least like a couple of years until they break down.
I do believe it's a good counter to Tesla Optimus. I just don't know how it's actually going to be applied in the real world, right? I'm certainly excited for it to do my dishes and to clean up. But I think the bigger large-scale use cases is most likely logistics, factory work. But there it kind of initiates then this discussion. We don't have to go too much into the ethical considerations of like if these robots at scale do human tasks, like what that actually implies for the broader society. Also, as you mentioned before, it's a private company, but there's still a lot of partners there. I think it's around Microsoft. I think Jeff Bezos himself as a person, Intel, and the OpenAI startup fund, I think, is also behind. Figure, again, the counter for that is Optimus. One of the two probably will be walking around at scale, maybe in a decade, something like that. So it's certainly
I hope it's less than the decade.
Maybe.
I mean, I think Optimus has gone into production already. I think they have some problems still from the news I've been seeing. They have some problems like designing the arms and the more complicated parts of the robot. But they are trying, and that's the thing. Tesla Optimus, still humanoid robot, still looks very similar to Figure 3 that is announced, but they always promote it as a factory worker, as a logistics. Like it works in a business environment to help you do things. And Figure 3, I don't know if it's some kind of satire or if it's just the approach of the company. They have a very similar, capable robot, and they're promoting it as a very expensive Roomba.
I mean, it's maybe a marketing frame. It was the same, maybe just to show that also on the AgentKit, basically the introduction to AgentKit. They just basically show how to create a travel agent, and it's always this like vacation flavor. Maybe that's just an OpenAI marketing scheme. Yeah. So the last maybe topic just for the finance corner, associated to more compute, more high bandwidth memory. I mean, it's not that we didn't say it at the beginning of the year, but Micron is up 120%. It's certainly something that we maybe more or less can put a bat on our shoulders, that we more or less saw that coming, with more reasoning, more autonomous thinking, that high bandwidth memory is actually working, and it's really super required in actually making AI really, really good. Secondly, new announcements. I will put it on the screen, actually two of them. NVIDIA and OpenAI, plus OpenAI and AMD, both companies going full steam ahead, building gigawatts of data centers to accelerate AI production and basically training for OpenAI. So these are really the announcements. High bandwidth memory going through the roof because of reasoning. Again, Micron, the stock to watch here. NVIDIA and AMD for cloud, basically chips they're using to train. And it's just a very interesting time to be alive. I don't know how far these stocks are flying in the next few weeks. I certainly more or less see a top happening. I don't know what you believe is happening in the later stage of 2025. But yeah, we are reaching new all-time highs probably every week.
I mean, I did know, and I realized very soon because I was looking at the forums that people are trying to run these models locally. So there's a lot of open source models, people trying to run them on fairly advanced, but still not professional level machines. And the point is always, how much memory do you have on your GPU? Because that's usually the maximum amount that you can run. Like the model that you can choose from is limited by the memory that you have. So NVIDIA sells and makes a lot of GPUs. That's, I think, where at least the initial value of NVIDIA came from, to GPUs. But NVIDIA did not make and does not make their own memory. So all the GPUs needs a lot of memory. Especially like if you're buying very, very high-end gaming GPUs, I think they cost like a couple grand. and it has 24 gigs of RAM. That's fine. But if you go into production level GPUs made for inference, sometimes they have like 60, 100 gigs of RAM, sometimes more. And that's, some of those GPUs cost you upwards of 50K, sometimes 100K a piece. And so it makes sense that much memory, and they're not being sold like one by one. Usually you buy them by a couple thousands. If you're building a data center we saw xAI do, someone needed to make all that memory. And I think Micron was expected to grow up. I think, Cyril, you had like a really good insight on that. And unlike, you could say, like Oracle and NVIDIA and I think OpenAI are doing some kind of hype around their stocks, and people say their stocks are overpriced, Micron actually has value on their things because I think it comes from having a lot of sales and a lot of demand for their memory. And I don't think anyone will compete with them at the scale that needs to be done anytime soon.
I mean, there is one Korean competitor, SK Hynix, but also, I mean, it's also a geopolitical problem. Maybe we don't want to go too much into hypotheticals, but there's just these two players, SK Hynix, Micron, for high bandwidth memory. A lot of the assumption was they're being commoditized, being memory, but now it just seems, especially from the demand side, NVIDIA and AMD, they need to stack that actually into their supercomputers. So that's a little bit the finance corner. Just to round up, we don't want to go too much into financial hypotheses going for the future, but AMD, Micron, and I think NVIDIA were really the week update on, well, what is happening on AI compute. Joe, any other topic for today before we wrap it up?
No, I think my AI agent is telling me that, to tell the audience, that this is totally not stock advice. Please do not take this as legal financial advice, as we are not credited to do so, and do not sue us, please. But
for educational purposes only.
This is all for educational purposes. You can do your own research and reach the exact same conclusions if you're smart and you know how to research stocks. We're just helping.
Maybe use an agent. Maybe use Claude Sonnet 4.5. Excellent. Joe, thank you for joining episode 30. This is already a lot of weeks that we are pushing content. If you're completely new to the channel, we shoot these episodes every single week. It's mostly mixed between AI engineering, cloud engineering, some new models, some new tools and skills that we especially apply every single day. So we try to share that. And also sometimes, like today, we do a finance and a tech corner just to deep dive on a few updates from the markets. Because again, if you're working and building in AI, you can leverage this knowledge to also hopefully generate investing returns on the stock market. So that's a really bit a good duality that we're trying to focus here. Thank you, Joao, for joining. Greetings to Lisbon, and we see us in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
See you next week.